And I think what we're seeing there is it's almost like, okay, here we go. He's done it quite a few times at this point. We're 3 weeks in after she's been missing.
Her eye defect is actually a really good thing. The interviewer pauses, clearly caught off guard. Gerry McCann continues, his voice steady, clinical. In marketing terms, it's a good marketing ploy. 3 years old, missing for 27 days. And her father is discussing her distinctive eye, a rare coloboma that gives her iris a keyhole appearance, as if reviewing an advertising campaign. The camera lingers on his face, no trembling lip, no glistening eyes, just the calculated assessment of a man who understands optics, both medical and public. It's May 30th, 2007, and while most parents of missing children collapse under the weight of unimaginable grief, Dr. Gerry McCann sits composed, explaining how his daughter's most unique feature has become a strategic asset in the search for her. What kind of father thinks in terms of marketing tools when his child has vanished without a trace? The answer isn't simple. Nothing about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann ever has been. In the years since that interview, those few seconds of footage have been dissected by armchair detectives from Boston to Baton Rouge, analyzed by behavioral experts from Chicago to Charleston. Some see a father desperately leveraging every advantage to find his child. Others glimpse something far more disturbing, a calculated performance that raises troubling questions. Tonight, we're going beyond the soundbite that's haunted internet forums for nearly 2 decades. We're examining what happens when private anguish collides with public scrutiny, when grief becomes performance, and when a single phrase cracks open the door to doubt. What does this clinical language reveal about one of the most publicized missing persons cases in modern history? And what does our obsession with it say about us? If you're fascinated by the psychology behind true crime cases, the moments when masks slip and words betray, hit subscribe now because we're diving deep today into the case that changed how the world views missing children and their parents. Praia da Luz, Portugal, May 3rd, 2007. A sleepy coastal resort town transformed into ground zero for what would become Europe's equivalent of the John Benet Ramsey case. The Ocean Club Resort sits just 100 yards from the beach. In apartment 5A, 3 children sleep while their parents dine with friends at a tapas restaurant, roughly 180 feet away, about the length of a New York City block. The adults take turns checking on the children throughout the evening. 8:30 p.m. Matthew Oldfield, a friend of the McCanns, walks by their apartment but doesn't enter. 9:05 p.m. Gerry McCann checks on his 3 children, Madeleine, nearly 4, and twins Sean and Amelie, just 2 years old, all sleeping soundly. He uses the bathroom, then returns to dinner. 9:25 p.m. Another friend, Jane Tanner, claims she sees a man carrying a child near the McCann apartment. This sighting will later become a critical and contested element of the investigation. 10 p.m. Kate McCann enters apartment 5A for her scheduled check. The bedroom door, which she remembers leaving slightly ajar, now stands wide open. A rush of air hits her face. The window is open, the shutters raised. Madeleine's bed is empty. Her scream cuts through the Portuguese night. They've taken her! Within minutes, resort staff and guests form search parties. They comb the beach, check dumpsters, peer under cars. Local police arrive at 11:10 p.m., a full hour after Kate's discovery. Their initial assessment? A missing child, likely wandered off. No crime scene tape, no evidence collection. Dozens of people move freely through apartment 5A, contaminating what might have been crucial forensic evidence. By dawn, the case has already begun to morph from local incident to international sensation. British consular staff arrive. The UK media machine roars to life. Within 24 hours, Madeleine's face appears on news broadcasts from London to Los Angeles. May 4th, Portuguese police finally bring in tracking dogs, but the scent trails lead nowhere. May 5th, the first press conference. Gerry and Kate McCann appear before cameras, Kate clutching Madeleine's stuffed animal, Cuddle Cat. The image becomes iconic, a mother in physical contact with the last thing her daughter touched. May 7th. Portuguese police admit they have no suspects. May 12th. Madeleine's 4th birthday passes. Her parents mark it with a cake and a public plea. May 14th, British businessman Stephen Wynyard offers a $1 million reward for information. Other celebrities follow: J.K. Rowling, Richard Branson, Wayne Rooney, until the reward tops $2.5 million, the equivalent of over $4 million at the time. The case explodes across American media. CNN's Nancy Grace devotes entire segments to the Maddie mystery. The Today Show sends correspondents to Portugal. The parallels to JonBenet Ramsey are immediate and unavoidable: a photogenic child, affluent parents, and a mystery that seems to deepen with each passing day. By the end of May, the McCanns have met with the Pope, launched a website, and established a fighting fund that will eventually raise over $2 million. Their media strategy is unprecedented for European missing persons cases, more reminiscent of American campaigns like those for Elizabeth Smart or Polly Klaas. But as May turns to June, the investigation takes a darker turn. Portuguese police, under intense pressure and unaccustomed to international scrutiny, begin to focus on inconsistencies in witness statements. Forensic teams return to apartment 5A, blood traces are discovered, and whispers begin, first in Portuguese tabloids, then across the globe, that perhaps the enemy isn't some unknown predator, but the very people leading the search. The stage is set for what will become not just a hunt for a missing child, but a global referendum on parental responsibility, media manipulation, and the court of public opinion. Drop in the comments where you were when you first heard about the Madeleine McCann case. Did you follow it from day one, or did you discover it years later through documentaries and podcasts? While most families of missing children retreat into private grief, the McCanns launched what can only be described as a full-scale media blitz. Within days of Madeleine's disappearance, they weren't just giving interviews, they were orchestrating a sophisticated public relations campaign that would have impressed Madison Avenue executives. May 8, 2007, just 5 days after Madeleine vanished, the McCann's family friend Alex Woolfall, head of crisis management at the PR firm Bell Pottinger, arrived in Portugal. This wasn't a casual friend offering support. This was a professional whose client list included major corporations and whose expertise lay in managing reputational damage. What would you do if your child vanished? Would you hire PR experts within days? The question hangs in the air, challenging our instincts about parental grief. But the McCanns, both medical doctors accustomed to clinical thinking, recognized something crucial. In the digital age, finding a missing child requires more than search parties. It requires attention, sustained and focused. By mid-May, the British Foreign Office had assigned Clarence Mitchell as the family's media liaison. Mitchell wasn't just any government official. He was the director of the UK's Media Monitoring Unit, a department that shaped how news was presented to the public. His previous role? Spokesperson for the parents of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, 2 children murdered in the infamous Soham killings. When Mitchell's government assignment ended, he didn't return to his desk job. Instead, he resigned his position to work for the McCanns full-time, a move that raised eyebrows among veteran crime reporters from Dallas to Detroit. What missing persons case warrants a former BBC journalist and government media strategist abandoning his career? Mitchell was joined by Justine McGuinness, a political consultant who had run for Parliament. Together, they crafted a campaign that borrowed more from political playbooks than traditional missing persons appeals. Press conferences became daily occurrences. Photo opportunities were meticulously planned. The messaging was consistent, disciplined, and relentless. Madeleine is missing. Someone took her. We will never stop looking. On May 15th, less than 2 weeks after their daughter disappeared, the McCanns incorporated Madeleine's Fund, leaving no stone unturned. This wasn't a hastily established GoFundMe. It was a company limited by guarantee, a legal structure with directors, articles of incorporation, and formal governance. The fund's board included not just Kate and Gerry, but educational leader Brian Kennedy, media director John Corner, and legal expert Edward Smethurst. Its stated objectives were clear: locate Madeleine, bring her abductors to justice, and provide support to the family. Financial statements filed with UK authorities show initial donations exceeding $1.8 million, as approximately $3.6 million at the time. The money funded private investigators, including the controversial Spanish agency Método 3, which charged $50,000 monthly. It paid for advertising campaigns across Europe and North Africa. It covered the McCanns' travel expenses as they embarked on a tour that included Germany, the Netherlands, Morocco, and the United States, where they appeared on Larry King Live and The Oprah Winfrey Show. By August 2007, the media operation had expanded to include a dedicated website, regular video updates, and a 24-hour hotline. The campaign's reach was staggering. Madeleine's image appeared on billboards at soccer matches, on the sides of British Airways planes, and during halftime at the FA Cup final. This wasn't grieving parents making desperate pleas. This was strategic communication at an industrial scale. May 4th, first press conference, local Portuguese media. May 10th, first international press conference, UK media dominates. May 30, meeting with Pope Benedict XVI, global coverage. June 6th, European tour begins, coverage expands to Germany, Netherlands. July 7th, global day of prayer for Madeleine, religious media engaged. August 11th, 100 days campaign launches, renewed global interest. The McCanns' approach represented a fundamental shift in how missing persons cases were handled. Before Madeleine, families typically relied on law enforcement to manage media. After Madeleine, the template changed: control the narrative, build a brand around the missing person, and leverage celebrity endorsements to maintain public interest. Critics in law enforcement, from retired FBI agents to veteran detectives in major American cities, questioned whether this media saturation helped or hindered the actual investigation. Portuguese police, accustomed to working methodically and privately, found themselves under unprecedented scrutiny. Every lead, every theory, every investigative decision was dissected in real time by a global audience. Meanwhile, as cameras focused on the parents' campaign, crucial early investigative opportunities may have been missed. Door-to-door canvassing was delayed. Security footage from nearby businesses wasn't immediately secured. Border checkpoints weren't alerted until hours after Madeleine was reported missing. The question lingered: was this sophisticated PR machine designed to find Madeleine or to shape public perception of her parents? Of all the strategic decisions made in the search for Madeleine McCann, none proved more distinctive or controversial than the emphasis placed on her right eye. Madeleine was born with a coloboma, a rare congenital condition affecting approximately 1 in 10,000 births. In her case, it created a distinctive dark keyhole-shaped mark in her iris, extending from her pupil toward the bottom of her eye at the 6 o'clock position. While medically insignificant, this feature would become the centerpiece of a global identification campaign. By mid-May 2007, the now iconic close-up image of Madeleine's face dominated posters, websites, and video appeals. The photo was deliberately selected and cropped to highlight her right eye, making the coloboma unmistakable. Accompanying this image, a slogan emerged that would become the campaign's signature: "Look into my eyes." The psychological impact of this approach was multi-layered. First, it created what marketing professionals call a distinctive memory trace, a feature so unique that it stands out in a sea of missing children posters. Second, it established eye contact between the missing child and the viewer, triggering empathy responses. Third, it implicitly suggested that the key to finding Madeleine lay in recognizing this distinctive feature. This strategy marked a significant departure from traditional missing persons campaigns. In the United States, the Amber Alert system and organizations like the National Center for Missing Exploited Children typically emphasize multiple identifying features: height, weight, clothing last worn, distinctive birthmarks or scars. The philosophy is comprehensive: give the public as much information as possible to aid identification. The McCann campaign took the opposite approach: focus overwhelmingly on a single, unmistakable feature that even a casual observer could recognize from a distance. American missing children advocates have long debated the merits of both approaches. Elizabeth Smart's 2002 abduction sparked a massive campaign that included multiple photos showing different angles and expressions. In contrast, the search for J.C. Duguid featured a single memorable school portrait. The smart case ended in recovery. Duguid remained missing for 18 years despite widespread publicity. The Look Into My Eyes campaign achieved unprecedented recognition. Market research conducted in late 2007 found that Madeleine's eye coloboma had a 76% recognition rate among European adults, higher than many commercial logos. This wasn't accidental. It was the result of deliberate application of marketing principles to a missing child case. The campaign materials were designed with precision. The official website featured a banner image where Madeleine's eye filled the entire frame. Posters used a consistent yellow and green color scheme, colors shown to have high retention in advertising studies. The coloboma was sometimes subtly enhanced in images to increase visibility, a technique borrowed from fashion photography. Even the merchandise, yes, merchandise, reinforced the eye motif. Yellow wristbands featured a stylized eye logo. T-shirts displayed the "Look" slogan prominently. Downloadable posters were designed with the eye positioned at optimal viewing height when displayed in store windows. This approach wasn't without precedent in American campaigns. The distinctive gap in Kyron Horman's front teeth became a focal point in the search for the Oregon boy who disappeared in 2010. Relisha Rudd's distinctive smile was emphasized in Washington, D.C. campaigns after her 2014 disappearance. But none elevated a single physical feature to the level of brand identity the way the McCann campaign did with Madeleine's eye. The strategy's effectiveness as an identification tool remains debatable. While the campaign generated thousands of reported sightings across Europe, North Africa, and even as far as New Zealand and Australia, none led to Madeleine. Critics argue that the emphasis on such a distinctive feature may have been counterproductive. Abductors could easily disguise or conceal the eye with colored contacts, glasses, or by keeping the child hidden from public view. Law enforcement experts from agencies like the FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team note that successful recoveries often come from recognizing behavioral patterns of abductors, not physical features of victims. A child's appearance can be altered, but suspicious adult behavior around a child often triggers the reports that lead to recovery. Yet the eye strategy achieved something perhaps more valuable to the McCanns than practical identification assistance. It kept Madeleine's case in the public consciousness long after most missing children cases fade from headlines. The distinctive eye became a symbol, instantly recognizable and emotionally resonant. It transformed Madeleine from one of many missing children into a singular, iconic case. The question remains: was this sophisticated approach designed primarily to find Madeleine, or to create a sustainable campaign that could maintain public interest indefinitely? This story gets even more complex. Hit like if you want us to cover more cases where media strategy overshadowed investigation. The intersection of marketing and missing persons raises profound questions about how we search for the lost in the digital age. Late May 2007. The McCanns have just returned from an audience with Pope Benedict XVI in Vatican City. The global media machine is at full throttle. Clarence Mitchell has arranged a series of interviews with major networks to maintain momentum as the case approaches its one-month mark. The setting is unremarkable: a hotel conference room hastily converted into an interview space. Lighting equipment crowds the corners. A sound technician adjusts levels. The interviewer reviews notes while Gerry and Kate McCann take their positions, composed and camera-ready, despite nearly 4 weeks of unimaginable stress. The interview begins predictably. Questions about the investigation's progress, the emotional toll, the twins' understanding of their sister's absence. The McCanns provide practiced responses, clear, concise, on message. They've done dozens of these interviews by now. The rhythm is familiar. Then comes the question about Madeleine's eye. The coloboma in her right eye has become central to your campaign. Can you tell us about that decision? Kate begins to answer, but Gerry leans forward slightly, a subtle shift in body language that behavioral analysts would later flag as significant. He takes over the response. What happens next has become one of the most analyzed, debated, and controversial moments in the entire McCann saga. Gerry McCann, father of a missing 3-year-old, describes his daughter's most distinctive physical feature, a feature that might help bring her home, as a really good thing because, in marketing terms, it's a good marketing ploy. The interviewer's expression flickers, surprise, perhaps discomfort, before professional composure returns. Kate McCann's face remains unchanged, suggesting she's heard this framing before. Gerry continues, explaining how the eye defect makes Madeleine instantly recognizable. The moment passes. The interview continues. But those few seconds, that choice of words, would echo through internet forums, documentary films, and true crime podcasts for years to come. Here's where the story gets complicated. Despite the quote's notoriety, pinpointing its exact source has proven remarkably difficult. The interview is frequently attributed to BBC News, but extensive searches of their archives yield no definitive clip. Some sources place it with a Spanish television network. Others claim it was part of a Sky News package that aired in late May or early June 2007. This attribution challenge has led to variations in how the quote is reported. Some versions have McCann saying, "good marketing ploy." Others record it as "great marketing tool." Still others quote him as saying, "it makes Madeleine easily identifiable, her eye defect, which we thought was a real negative, but now we know is actually a good thing." Forensic audio analysts who've examined available clips note subtle differences in McCann's delivery across interviews. In some, his tone is matter-of-fact, clinical, consistent with his medical background. In others, there's a hint of defensive justification, as if anticipating criticism of the campaign's focus on the eye. Body language experts from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit and similar agencies have offered varied interpretations. Some note that McCann's posture during discussions of campaign strategy differs markedly from his demeanor when discussing Madeleine herself, more animated, engaged, almost enthusiastic when talking tactics, more subdued when addressing his daughter's fate. Others caution against overinterpretation, pointing out that by late May, the McCanns were operating on minimal sleep, under extreme stress, and likely following communication guidance from their PR advisors. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente, who has analyzed numerous cases of parents with missing children, notes that compartmentalization is a common coping mechanism, discussing strategy in clinical terms while walling off the emotional reality. The context matters significantly. By the time of this interview, the McCanns were no longer just grieving parents. They were managing a multi-million-dollar campaign, coordinating with PR professionals, and making daily strategic decisions about messaging. The language of marketing had likely become part of their daily vocabulary as they worked with media experts. Dr. Paul Ekman, renowned for his work on facial expressions and emotional states, has noted that the McCanns' television appearances show signs of emotional leakage, brief micro-expressions that suggest suppressed feelings breaking through a composed exterior. During the marketing comment, Gerry displays what Ekman categorizes as duping delight, a subtle satisfaction in successfully managing public perception. However, other behavioral scientists, including those who've worked with traumatized parents, offer a different interpretation. Dr. Lucy Berliner of the Harborview Center for Sexual Assault and Traumatic Stress suggests that clinical language can serve as an emotional buffer, allowing parents to function when discussing otherwise unbearable topics. The full context of the statement reveals something often omitted in viral clips. After the marketing comment, Gerry continues, "The distinction of that eye defect is that in a child's face it is a rare eye defect, and certainly we know of no other child in this wider area that has that, and it certainly helps people to identify her." This additional context suggests a father trying, perhaps awkwardly, to find hope in a distinctive feature that might bring his daughter home. The clinical framing could be interpreted as a doctor's instinctive approach or as something more calculated. Former Scotland Yard detective Colin Sutton, who reviewed the case in 2010, offers perhaps the most balanced assessment. The choice of words is unfortunate and has been seized upon by critics. But we must remember that under extreme stress, people often default to the language of their professional training. For doctors, that can mean clinical terminology that sounds cold to outsiders. The interview moment remains a Rorschach test for how viewers perceive the McCanns. Those predisposed to suspicion see calculated performance. Those inclined toward empathy see traumatized parents adopting the language of their advisors in a desperate bid to maintain public interest in their missing child. It's 9:15 p.m. as you're watching this. Would you have chosen different words if you were in Gerry's position? Or does his clinical approach make sense given the circumstances? The comments section awaits your verdict. The marketing comment landed differently across the Atlantic, revealing stark contrasts in how American and European media approach crime coverage. While European outlets, particularly British tabloids, pounced on the phrase as potential evidence of parental detachment, American networks largely contextualized it within crisis communication strategies. CNN's coverage, anchored by Anderson Cooper, framed the comment as unfortunate phrasing from parents operating under unimaginable pressure. NBC's Dateline positioned it as a moment where medical training overrode emotional expression. The American approach reflected a media culture more accustomed to sophisticated missing persons campaigns, from the Elizabeth Smart Foundation to the Adam Walsh Center. European coverage took a darker turn. Britain's Daily Mirror ran the headline, "Marketing Madeleine," while Portuguese newspaper Correio da Manhã suggested the comment revealed an obsession with publicity over investigation. German outlet Der Spiegel questioned whether the McCanns had crossed the line between raising awareness and creating a brand. This transatlantic divide wasn't merely journalistic preference. It reflected fundamental cultural differences in how missing children cases are handled. America, with its history of high-profile abductions from Adam Walsh to John Benet Ramsey, had developed a template for these campaigns. Parents were expected to work with media consultants, create foundations, and employ marketing tactics. In Europe, particularly Portugal, such approaches were viewed with suspicion. Social media amplified these divisions. YouTube comment sections became battlegrounds where the marketing quote was dissected frame by frame. Reddit threads dedicated to the case accumulated thousands of comments analyzing those few seconds of footage. Facebook groups formed around competing interpretations, some defending the McCanns as strategic parents fighting to find their child, others condemning them as calculating performers. The phrase became a litmus test for how viewers perceived the entire case. Those who found the McCanns suspicious pointed to it as evidence of emotional disconnection. Those who believed in their innocence saw it as an unfortunate word choice by a father operating under extreme duress. Dr. Sharon Smith, former FBI Behavioral Science Unit analyst who specialized in statement analysis, notes that single phrases rarely provide definitive insights. Isolated comments, particularly under stress, are unreliable indicators of deception or guilt. What matters is pattern and context. This perspective is echoed by forensic psychologist Dr. Catherine Ramsland, who has studied parental behavior in high-profile missing children cases. Parents who maintain public composure are often judged harshly, but controlled affect can be a survival mechanism, not evidence of indifference. The behavioral analysis becomes more complex when considering cultural expectations. American audiences, influenced by cases like the Polly Klaas Foundation and the Morgan Nick Foundation, have become accustomed to parents who transform grief into activism. European viewers, particularly in Portugal's more reserved culture, expected more visible emotional distress. Dr. Paul Ekman's research on universal facial expressions suggests that genuine grief produces involuntary muscle movements that are difficult to suppress. His analysis of the McCanns' television appearances identified what he terms grief markers during discussions of Madeleine herself, but noted their absence during strategic discussions, including the marketing comment. This observation aligns with research on compartmentalization as a trauma response. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, leading trauma researcher and author of The Body Keeps the Score, explains that traumatized individuals often separate emotional content from practical action as a protective mechanism. For the McCanns, discussing campaign strategy in clinical terms while walling off the emotional reality of their daughter's disappearance could represent this psychological partitioning. The media analysis of the comment also revealed gendered expectations. Kate McCann faced harsher judgment for her composed demeanor than Gerry did for his clinical language. This reflects well-documented disparities in how mothers and fathers are evaluated in missing children cases. Mothers who don't display expected emotional responses, tears, visible distress, voice breaking, face greater suspicion than fathers who present as controlled or strategic. Former prosecutor Wendy Murphy, who has worked on numerous child abduction cases in Massachusetts, observes, "We expect mothers to be emotional and fathers to be strategic. When those roles are reversed or when both parents maintain composure, public suspicion increases dramatically." The marketing comment's impact extended beyond public opinion to influence the investigation itself. Portuguese police, already struggling with unprecedented international scrutiny, reportedly viewed the phrase as significant. According to leaked police files, investigators cited the comment in internal documents questioning the McCann's emotional authenticity. This feedback loop, where media coverage influences investigative priorities, which then generate more media coverage, created what criminologists call investigative tunnel vision. The focus on parental behavior potentially diverted resources from other avenues of investigation during crucial early weeks. 15 years later, the phrase remains a touchstone in discussions of the case. YouTube documentaries feature it prominently. Podcasts debate its significance. Online sleuths cite it as evidence supporting their theories. A single comment, lasting seconds, has shaped public perception of a case spanning decades. This case continues to evolve with new developments emerging regularly. Make sure you're notified of our updates by tapping that bell icon. Our next video will examine the forensic evidence that shifted the investigation's focus to the parents themselves. When we watch parents of missing children on television, we believe we know what genuine grief looks like. We expect tears, voice breaks, emotional pleas. We think we can spot a performance, but the science of trauma tells a very different story, one that challenges our most basic assumptions about how people should behave in unimaginable circumstances. Trauma neurobiologist Dr. Stephen Porges explains that extreme stress activates primitive brain circuits that can produce seemingly inappropriate responses. His polyvagal theory demonstrates how trauma can trigger a freeze state, a biological shutdown that presents as emotional flatness or detachment. This isn't performance, it's physiology. The public sees emotional numbness and thinks cold or guilty, explains Dr. Porges. What they're actually witnessing is a nervous system in survival mode. This disconnect between public expectation and trauma reality has sabotaged numerous investigations. Consider the case of Patsy Ramsey, who was judged harshly for her composed television appearances following daughter John Bonet's murder. For years, her controlled demeanor fueled public suspicion, despite insufficient physical evidence linking her to the crime. Similarly, when Susan Smith appeared before cameras in Union County, South Carolina in 1994, behavioral analysts immediately flagged her inappropriate affect while pleading for the return of her supposedly kidnapped sons. In Smith's case, the suspicions proved correct. She had indeed murdered her children, but her demeanor alone wasn't definitive evidence. The pattern repeated with Diane Downs in Springfield, Oregon, whose unusual calmness, while describing an alleged carjacking that left her children shot, raised immediate red flags for investigators. Like Smith, Downs was eventually convicted of attacking her own children. These high-profile American cases, where parental behavior did indicate guilt, have created a problematic template through which the public views all parents of missing children. We've developed a false confidence in our ability to detect deception through demeanor alone. Dr. Bella DiPolo, a psychologist who has conducted extensive research on deception detection, found that even trained professionals achieve only 54% accuracy in distinguishing lies from truth based on behavioral cues, barely better than random chance. Her research demonstrates that we vastly overestimate our ability to read others, particularly in high-stress situations. This science directly challenges how we interpret the McCann's behavior, including Gerry's marketing comment. What appears calculated might instead reflect what trauma specialists call adaptive detachment, a psychological mechanism that allows functioning amid overwhelming distress. Dr. Lucy Berliner, who has worked with hundreds of traumatized parents at the Harborview Center for Sexual Assault and Traumatic Stress, explains, "Parents of missing children often enter a state where they can discuss search strategies with remarkable clarity while appearing emotionally disconnected. This compartmentalization is a survival mechanism, not evidence of fabrication." The McCanns, both medical professionals, may have been particularly prone to this response. Their training had taught them to function under extreme pressure by separating emotion from action. In hospital settings, this ability saves lives. In front of cameras, it aroused suspicion. Research on trauma speech patterns by linguist Dr. Roger Shuey identifies several characteristics common among traumatized individuals: clinical terminology, passive voice constructions, and emotional distancing through formal language. All these patterns appear in the McCann's interviews, particularly Gerry's descriptions of the campaign strategy. This scientific context doesn't prove the McCann's innocence, but it does challenge the assumption that their communication style indicates guilt. As forensic psychologist Dr. Catherine Ramsland notes, behavioral analysis is a tool for generating investigative hypotheses, not a method for determining truth. The public's misunderstanding of trauma responses has real consequences for investigations. When resources are diverted based on behavioral misinterpretations, crucial early investigative opportunities may be missed. In the McCann case, Portuguese police spent significant time analyzing the parents' demeanor rather than pursuing other leads during the critical first weeks. American cases provide stark examples of this investigative pitfall. When Darlie Routier was filmed having a birthday celebration at her son's grave in Rolette, Texas, public opinion turned sharply against her. The video of her spraying silly string on the grave became central to her murder conviction. Yet trauma experts note that grief rituals take many forms, and judging their appropriateness is deeply problematic. Similarly, when Amanda Knox was observed kissing her boyfriend outside the crime scene where her roommate was murdered in Perugia, Italy, her behavior was deemed inappropriate and suspicious. Years later, DNA evidence exonerated Knox, demonstrating the danger of behavioral assumptions. The science of trauma also explains why the McCann's media campaign itself generated suspicion. Dr. Sarah Goodman of the Trauma Research Foundation notes that trauma can produce hyperactivity and intense focus on controllable tasks, exactly what we saw in the McCann's relentless publicity efforts. Creating a campaign provides structure amid chaos, she explains. It gives traumatized parents something to do when they feel otherwise helpless. This perspective invites us to reconsider not just the marketing comment, but the entire media operation that surrounded it. What appeared to critics as calculated image management might instead represent a trauma response channeled through professional skills. The science doesn't provide definitive answers about what happened to Madeleine McCann. It does, however, caution us against the dangerous certainty that we can determine truth through behavior alone. What's the weather like where you're watching? Sometimes I wonder if our environment affects how we interpret true crime cases. Are we more suspicious on dark, rainy nights, more empathetic on sunny afternoons? Our judgments may be influenced by factors we rarely consider. The phrase "good marketing ploy" exists at the intersection of multiple complex realities: a missing child, grieving parents, media machinery, public judgment, and the science of trauma. Like the case itself, it defies simple interpretation. What we can say with certainty is that a single phrase uttered in the pressure cooker of an international media campaign became a Rorschach test for how we view the McCanns and, by extension, how we process cases where children vanish and parents become subjects of scrutiny. The marketing comment reveals something profound about our relationship with true crime narratives. We crave certainty in cases that may never provide it. We search for the telling detail, the slip of the tongue, the revealing micro-expression that will unlock the mystery. We believe we can detect deception through screens, across oceans, years after the fact. This impulse isn't new. From the Lindbergh kidnapping to John Benet Ramsey, from Kaylee Anthony to Madeleine McCann, we scrutinize parents' words and behaviors, convinced we can distinguish genuine grief from performance. The science tells us we're wrong, that trauma manifests in ways that often appear suspicious to untrained observers. Yet the questions linger. Why that phrase? Why frame a child's distinctive feature in marketing terms? Was it simply an unfortunate word choice by a father operating under unimaginable pressure? Was it the language of medical detachment? Or did it reveal something more calculated about the campaign that came to overshadow the search? Perhaps the most troubling aspect of the McCann case is how the media operation, initially created to find Madeleine, eventually became the story itself. The machinery designed to locate a missing child instead generated endless analysis of the parents' behavior, diverting attention from the central question, what happened to Madeleine? 16 years later, we still don't have that answer. German prosecutors believe they've identified the perpetrator in Christian Bruckner, but conclusive evidence remains elusive. Portuguese authorities have pursued multiple leads without resolution. British police continue their investigation through Operation Grange. Meanwhile, the phrase marketing ploy continues to echo through internet forums and documentary films, a verbal artifact that has outlived many of the actual investigative developments. This case reminds us that in the court of public opinion, words can become evidence, demeanor can become proof, and a single phrase can shape perception more powerfully than forensic facts. It challenges us to question our confidence in reading others, especially through the distorting lens of media. Whether Gerry McCann's choice of words revealed something significant or merely reflected the clinical thinking of a doctor under stress, it has become part of the complex tapestry of a case that continues to haunt the public imagination. If this analysis has changed how you think about the McCann case or made you question how we interpret behavior in true crime stories, share this video with someone who's fascinated by true crime psychology. The conversation is worth having. Next week, we'll examine another case where public perception and investigative reality collided. The mysterious disappearance of Maura Murray, whose vanishing from a New Hampshire roadside sparked one of the internet's most enduring true crime communities.